All right, so in this video, I want to talk about life after a Kundalini awakening. Most in particular, life after a Kundalini awakening that's really just incredibly fresh. Maybe it happened a day ago, a week ago, a month ago, or 2 months ago, but where that new wiring just kind of exploded. And so you might have had a realization, or maybe you just kind of figured it out that boom, the cat's out of the bag, and you're doing some research and you don't understand really what's going on. I know for myself, that actually was overwhelming and honestly at times kind of scary, not understanding what was going on, not understanding the resources, and in particular, feeling like I just figured out my life's purpose and all of these downloads of new information, super excited to go out, shout on the rooftops about what had happened to me, talk about my life's purpose, share with people my perspective on all of these downloads and things that I had come to realize. But I think that the most important thing that I want to mention is something that I wish I knew, back then. And I did actually at one point kind of had this realization after talking to a mentor. And that is really that if that energetic awakening has just happened, it's really a time to relax. It's a time to reflect. It's a time to just be, to rest and to go inside. Right when you have a Kundalini awakening, you are going from like 10 miles per hour to 100 miles per hour. You're just go, 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 go. And it's very easy to become ungrounded and sucked into the outside world because it's more or less a pretty exciting time. I think the way that I described it to a friend a few days into it was that it's like Christmas every day. You're having this realization of kind of almost feeling like, hey, you're the chosen one, that you figured out all these secrets of the universe. And in some ways, understanding maybe some of those underlying realities, that's true. But I can definitely say that I invite you to, rather than thinking about your outward purpose, maybe your life purpose and all those beautiful realizations you had, there's going to be time for that. As I record this video, it's been just about 8 years since my initial Kundalini awakening. And I can definitely say that I actually thought that I was enlightened when it first happened. And I can laugh about that now, and it's okay to honestly that I had felt that. But looking back on it, it really was just the beginning of my inward journey to go inward and to sort of have an unfoldment and an uncovering of some of those more peaceful inside knowings. And so that's what I want to talk about today, is inviting you to shift to your inner world, especially if you just had this energetic awakening and you're looking on the internet for all this information, because as I mentioned, you had this new wiring. And for me in particular, I had an epiphany, and I think I talk about it in another video, where I had this explosion as I was meditating. That I was meditating and I closed my eyes and then I opened them and I thought, holy shit, my thoughts become things. I'm not a victim of circumstance. I'm the creator of my reality. And I was just like, boom, the realization hit me with every cell of my body. And I was so pumped up to have this realization, to honestly understand that for 33 years, even though that for some of you that may sound like a basic understanding of the universe, for me, it was not. I had no idea that the same thoughts that I'd been thinking over and over, the same stories I'd been telling myself, and that victim consciousness that I shift out of quite quickly was something that the way the universe worked. And in a couple stories I'm going to talk about today, but really about inviting you to ground that energy, to go within. Otherwise, for me, there's definitely some complications that can occur for myself as you appear ungrounded to the world, and as you want to tell the world and shout onto the rooftops, all these things, especially your friends and family. I can definitely say for them, it could appear as mental health issues and almost a fragmented mind, because the things that have happened really change our perspective on the world. We're seeing the world like this in an instant. When it flips, that's such a dramatic shift that it can obviously, when we're speaking to friends and family, appear like a mental health issue when it's really not. And in some ways, maybe a spiritual crisis is a mental health issue. It's just not something that needs a diagnosis like being manic or bipolar. Those things I think are jumping to conclusions. And so I'd like to share a story with you to kind of illustrate these points and to help you out, especially if you stumbled upon this video and you may have had this energetic shift or this primordial energy awaken at the base of your spine. And so I had this epiphany. My thoughts become things. I'm not a victim of circumstance. I'm the creator of my reality. And at the time, this new realization, it really took me into the sky. My energy was just kind of just flowing out my crown chakra, flowing out my head, and it was all in my cranial, in my head. And luckily at the time I had an acupuncturist, also a Reiki master, this wonderful woman in DC who I had been going to for many years leading up to this awakening. And so it was probably a day or two after the Kundalini awakening where I called her and I said, hey, I need a session like ASAP. I think I had a Kundalini awakening. And so she penciled me in to get me in pretty early after that experience. And so I get into the room with my acupuncturist, again, who's also a Reiki master. So she's very in tune and very empathetic towards feeling energy, especially if it's something had changed. And she had known my energy body, having worked on me for many years. And so she scanned my body, and she very quickly, I remember me at the bottom of the table, like looking up and be like, yeah, what do you think? And she's like, yeah, there's something definitely different here. She said, I definitely have never felt this energy from you. I am feeling a primordial energy. And she said, yeah, this does feel like something like a Kundalini awakening. Again, she hadn't had a Kundalini awakening, but as someone who is a Reiki master and acupuncturist, when it comes to understanding Qi, she very much understood that, hey, this is something that wasn't present before, and this is very likely a Kundalini awakening. And so what she did, rather than doing acupuncture, she actually grounded. She went to my feet and tried to ground the energy, knowing again that all the energy perhaps is in my mind and in my head rather than grounded into the earth. And so she did that, which was a really cool session. And then we sat down after, like we normally do, kind of talking about stuff. And I went on to tell her about my epiphany. And I said, hey, did you know our thoughts create our reality? And, I'm having just this burst of energy. And I'm saying, hey, with my energy, I'm shape-shifting the room. I'm controlling the clock. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. And then I also went on to say, hey, I also think that I can, I have this weird ability to read minds. And now whether or not any of that's true, that's irrelevant. The point being is that, I had just this ungrounded energy that's just spewing out of my mouth at the time. And so I went on to tell her that, hey, I believe that you are thinking about getting a new building, a new office. I think it's a great idea. I also, think that you were thinking about raising your prices. So I think it's a good thing to raise your prices. And by the way, actually, all this was actually true. And so I think her eyes were kind of lit up like, how the hell does he know this? And so I leave the room like kind of thinking like, I just told her about reality and, all that stuff and whatnot. Again, focusing on the outside world because I'm so ungrounded. This experience just happened. Later that night, she called me and she says, hey, John, do you have a minute? And this caught me off guard because she had never called me outside of maybe saying, hey, are you available for an appointment? And so I remember walking in the backyard and in the grass and walking around. I actually can vividly remember this. And she said, there's no doubt that I think that you had a Kundalini awakening. I felt that energy. It was primordial. It was different. There's no doubt. However, John, I'm concerned a little bit, that perhaps, there's some mental health issues that could have arisen with this awakening as well. And I went after you left and I looked up manic, what is it like to be in a mania or a manic episode? And she went on to read these symptoms. And the first was increased energy. And when I'm talking about increased energy of, hey, not being able to sleep, pacing, and walking constantly and just never running out of energy and lack of appetite. And I sat there and I thought like, holy shit, yeah, absolutely. I definitely have that symptom. And she goes on to the next one. She says, well, racing mind. And I thought, well, absolutely. I mean, I'm bouncing from thought to thought. My thoughts create reality. I'm the chosen one. All of these different things are popping up in my mind. And again, there's no judgment on myself. I have to send love to myself. And I think we need to do that in these times. But she goes on to say, and the last one is an inflated self-esteem. And I remember thinking like, yeah, no, I'm the chosen one. I'm going to be a thought leader in consciousness. It's my job to save the world. I'm a psychic. And so I bring this up because, when all of this stuff in some perhaps level could be true. But when we focus on the outside world, especially when it happens and we don't take time to ground, and we go and we try to teach our new realizations and all of these things that we've realized within perhaps a moment, just an instant, well, it can be quite off-putting and honestly scary for those that love us. And you have to think about putting yourself in their shoes. When I had that experience, well, my shift in reality happened in an instant. And so when I woke up the next morning, things looked different, things smelled different, things felt different. However, when you go and you talk to your family members, your girlfriend, your husband and wife, your therapist, or not your therapist, that'd be a good place to go, but your friends and family, well, you're going to appear like you're experiencing mental health issues. And perhaps in a spiritual crisis, there is a layer of mental unrest. However, I would caution that we don't want to be labeling ourselves as manic or bipolar or any of those things just yet. It's time again, as the point of this video, to go inside, to ground this energy, and to really understand that our loved ones in particular, this is a radical thing. If we're going to kind of, spew out all our realizations, all our knowings to them, and it happens so quickly, if we put ourselves in their shoes, well, it is going to appear like mental health issues. Because there's so many different nervous systems and everyone has a different path, everyone has a different spiritual path, perhaps it's not a surprise to you that you had a Kundalini awakening. Perhaps you're preparing for it. And so that means you're experiencing some ecstatic bliss. And that's amazing. Congratulations. It's something that you earned. And it's a natural part of human evolution. Now, but if you're someone like me, that it was just a radical shift in perception, something you weren't prepared for, something that you weren't expecting or even knew existed, well, that means that you may find yourself a little bit scared, and then a lack of understanding. And really, I think what would be helpful is to share some resources. And I think that needing help and support is a big part of that. Now, for me, I had an individual that I was put in contact with and I've talked about before, and her name is Dr. Bonnie Greenwell. And she is a transpersonal psychologist who's actually a real expert when it comes to Kundalini awakening, someone who experienced a Kundalini awakening, someone who actually received her PhD in Kundalini awakening. So she actually did her dissertation and spent her entire life meeting with individuals who had these experiences, and in particular, individuals who are experiencing spiritual crises. So essentially, kind of like me, this just quick, instantaneous realization that really can affect the mind and the mental health as well. So I want to point out some resources that are on her website. Unfortunately, you're not going to be able to meet with Bonnie Greenwell. She did pass away, but I believe her family, in particular, I think one of her daughters, continued on with her website, and I think that is honestly such an amazing thing. And on her website, she points out a few different resources, and I think that there are resources that are a lot that are free, some perhaps that are paid for. I have zero affiliation to these resources. I'm just sharing them with you because I think that they were helpful for me. And in particular, talking to Bonnie Greenwell, who is a transpersonal psychologist, was very helpful to me. And I think that an expert like that is certainly going to have the right resources. And I do in particular mention transpersonal psychologists because they are mental health professionals who incorporate the spiritual and transcendental aspects of the human experience into their counseling, into their research. And so Again, if you're someone who's had this unexpected experience, if you're experiencing perhaps what we call a spiritual crisis, and you need a little bit of support, a transpersonal psychologist is going to have that understanding of mental health, and also that transcendental and spiritual aspects and how they all come together in the human psyche to have this whole infinite human experience. And so I think they're a wonderful resource. And in the description of the video, I will include the links to some of the websites that she recommends to reach out to. So in conclusion, if you found this video because you had a Kundalini awakening, I hope you found it helpful. And please understand that a Kundalini awakening is a natural part of human evolution. And if I could give myself the best advice for myself now to myself 8 years ago, it would simply be just to relax, to reflect, to go inside, to be. And so it's really a time to turn inward rather than focusing on the outward. So if you found this video helpful, like and subscribe. And if you're interested to learn more about inner vision life and how our inside and our outside world are connected, check out some more videos, and I'll be talking about a lot of that stuff. All right, I'll catch you on the next one.